So, Mega Evolution's back. Pokemon Legends ZA is the soon-to-be-released next title in the Pokemon series, and one of its most exciting parts, amidst the changes in gameplay and Fable saturation and textures, is the return of Mega Evolution. I love all the new designs we've been getting, and I'm really excited to see it back after so long. But did we ever figure out its mechanics, really? Not in the games, that one's easy. See, there's a big button for it right there. No, I mean how it works in-universe. Despite its presence in 2 mainline generations and countless spin-offs, we don't really have a good grasp of how Mega Evolution works aside from the surface level, and a few theories that are never confirmed and often feel contradictory. Where did it come from? What causes it? Why is it so often a painful or unpleasant experience? What are Keystones and Mega Stones? Why do we have 2 different accounts of the first ever Mega Evolution? And how does all of this connect to the history of catastrophes that marked the Hoenn region, or the Great Wars that scarred Kalos 3,000 years ago? With its mainline return right around the corner, I believe it is about time we solve this mystery once and for all, at least where it stands before ZA releases. And lucky for us, while the previous games do not give us much direct information. With all the pieces left across X and Y, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, and even a little bit of Generations 3 and 4, I believe we can dive much deeper into this mystery than ever before. Look, I know the game came out, okay? I know. Video editing takes a long time, so just let's all act like ZA hasn't been out, and we're watching this video right before. And don't bring up any story thing in the comments, because I don't know them yet, and if something happens, and you tell me, I'll find you. So, what even is Mega Evolution? The phenomenon itself is pretty simple, enough for us to lay out an easy formula. For Mega Evolution to happen, what's needed is a trainer, holding a keystone, and a Pokemon from a species able to Mega Evolve who they form strong enough bonds with and who is holding a Mega Stone, except for one specific case that we'll get into eventually. Humans and Pokemon are pretty self-explanatory. That's a human, that's a Pokemon, simple. It's worth noting that bonds between trainers and Pokemon having an effect on the Pokemon has been a known phenomenon since Generation 2 with the introduction of friendship evolutions. Easy enough, that's half of the equation solved. Unfortunately, the remaining parts are a bit of a puzzle. Keystones and Mega Stones are a very elusive part of the process. Visually, they don't give us much of anything. A keystone is a small, iridescent rock with a dark pattern in the center looking like a stylized DNA strand. A Megastone is mostly the same, though the colors are limited to their respective species palette, and the strand has become more like intertwined colors. Even Gherkin, the Mega Evolution specialist, and Sycamore, the professor studying it, know very little about them. At best, Sycamore suggests during the postgame that they could be evolutionary stones that were changed by the blast of the ultimate weapon 3,000 years ago. The life force of many Pokemon— wait, what is he talking about? So this has always confused me. Sycamore here says the energy used to fire the ultimate weapon 3,000 years ago, the one AZ used to end the war, was Xerneas and Yveltal's. But we know that's not true? That's what Lysander used in the present, yes, but AZ famously used a bunch of, at the time, living Pokemon. That's what the rock near Geosenge are. He maybe could have also used Xerneas and Yveltal, the weapon does glow with their color even in the flashback. But I don't know, I feel like either he or Lysander would have mentioned it. Though I don't think it has to be a contradiction. Xerneas and Yveltal are Pokemon of life and death, with Xerneas being able to give out endless life energy and Yveltal being able to absorb it. So even if it wasn't from the same source, you could probably get the same energy from a bunch of regular Pokemon. The ultimate weapon's energy has interesting effects that we can observe from its only recipients, AZ and his Floet. AZ is extremely long-lived and believed to be immortal, though his body still seems to be aging. Though for our purposes, Floet is much more interesting. She has significantly better stats than any other Floet, with a base stat total only 1 point away from Florges somehow, and even her own signature move, Light of Ruin, which happens to be the most powerful fairy-type move ever. It's at least pretty clear this energy doesn't leave you unchanged, so the idea of it irradiating something and later causing the phenomenon of Mega Evolution makes sense enough. But Sycamore's proposition of evolutionary stones feels a little tacked on, though for now I suppose it works. Surprisingly enough, this isn't the only interesting thing to happen during this discussion. After we touch the Anister Sundial, our Mega Ring is upgraded, allowing us to see Mega Stones. Isn't that interesting? Here, Sycamore lists 2 factors in the upgrade of your Mega Ring. Your battle against a legendary Pokemon, either Yveltal or Xerneas, and the Anister Sundial? We've already gone over the former, so let's focus on the much more confusing part here. We know very little about this sundial. It's said to have existed for over 3,000 years, which would make it older than the war and the ultimate weapon, and, according to Sycamore, changes sunlight into a mysterious light between 8 and 9 PM that makes Megastones visible, but only if you have an upgraded Mega Ring, which for me is pretty much up there in terms of insane things these games just throw at you. There's not really much else about it, save for maybe the installation in front of it. For some reason, it starts rotating whenever it's mysterious light time, but any connection that might have to anything is never brought up. It's probably a stylistic representation of a solar system, what with the sun's involvement in the city's overall space theme, but if so, it's missing a few rings. For as good a set piece as it is, there isn't much to make sense of here, and any more time spent staring at this thing might make me actually go insane. And so, this is what X and Y leaves us with. A few theories on why Mega Evolution even happens, and a lot of parts that feel either tacked on or wholly unexplained. Thankfully, the other half of Generation 6, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, manages to put all, well most of, these disparate pieces together, and well and truly explain to us where Mega Evolution comes from. We can return to the remaining unknowns in our Mega Evolution equation. Let's first turn to the energy from the ultimate weapon. It is named Infinity Energy by the Devon Corporation, after their studies of the ultimate weapon, which happened somehow. I guess maybe Kalos just left their big murder gun out and about for people to look at. Little is known about it still, though what we know from X and Y still remains canon. Interestingly, Hoenn makes another connection. It's not until you've beaten Primal Groudon and Kyogre that you become able to see Mega Stones like in X and Y. They're said to be charged with an ancient energy that pours from deep below Hoenn and once covered its surface, which is most likely Infinity Energy, as it has the same effect as Xerneas and Yveltal. We thus understand half of what makes a Megastone, a very strong dose of Infinity Energy irradiating. What exactly? Sycamore suggests evolutionary stones, though I don't think that's true. To know why, we'll have to look into the history of Mega Evolution itself. For being the region that introduced the concept, the story of the first Mega Evolution told in Kalos is extremely uneventful, simply saying a trainer in its Lucario one day found a Megastone and Keystone and just did it. That's it! Cool lore, guys. Thankfully, the Hoenn region gives us a different story of Mega Evolution. It still dates to 3,000 years ago, much like Kalos, though that is about where the similarities end. Unlike the grandiose 2 sentences we get from Kalos, the Draconid people of Hoenn have a much more detailed, and for our purposes, much more interesting tale. The Draconid lorekeeper, Zinnia, talks about a long-lost age thousands of years ago where the world was overflowing with natural energy, what we know now as Infinity Energy. Primal Groudon and Kyogre would fight endlessly over said energy as disaster after disaster swept the region, including a rain of meteors that shone with a rainbow brilliance as if life was held within. Then, as if after the meteors, Rayquaza appeared, and its power managed to appease the other 2 legendary, enough for them to retreat. After a millennia of peace, another great meteoroid crashed into the Hoenn region, big enough to form the crater that then became Sootopolis. From that crater, the ancient energy that once covered Hoenn's surfaces poured out. And just like before, the super ancient Pokemon awoke to fight over it. Remembering their history from 1,000 years ago, the people of Hoenn made a wish upon the giant meteorite, a meteorite that Zinnia states resembled a vast and powerful keystone, and summoned Rayquaza from the sky. Thanks to the people's wish, Rayquaza was able to change forms and Mega Evolve, easily besting Primal Groudon and Kyogre and bringing peace back to the land of Hoenn. A meteorite serving as a keystone, after being flooded with Infinity Energy? How interesting. Slotting this tale into our previous explanation of Mega Evolution, we find very similar pieces as in the example. We have a trainer, in the form of the people of Hoenn, and a Pokemon. The keystone is accounted for in the form of the huge meteorite, though there is a missing component, isn't there? Without a Megastone, how was Rayquaza able to Mega Evolve? Thankfully, the game gives us an explanation. Rayquaza possesses a unique trait named the Mikado Organ by the Devon Corporation. With it, it is able to accumulate power from the meteorite it eats up in the ozone layer, enough for it to Mega Evolve. The game even makes an example of it, with Zinnia's plan to give Rayquaza enough energy to Mega Evolve by giving it a bunch of stolen keystones failing, only for the player to feed a meteorite shard to the legendary, finally triggering its Mega Evolution. Strange, isn't it? We have an exact match for our previous example, but both the Keystone and Megastone have been replaced by meteorites, yet everything works just fine. It's almost as if...
That meteorite, it's just like... a Megastone!
Let me propose a solution, then. Could it be that Sycamore's theory about the origins of Megastones is wrong, though just barely? They are stones irradiated by the ultimate weapon, or another source of infinity energy, that is true. But what if, instead of evolutionary stones, they were meteorites? Ones that crashed across both Kalos and Hoenn a long time ago, and laid there unchanged until they were hit by a surge of infinity energy. be it the super ancient Pokemon waking or the ancient lore. We know thanks to Cosmo that Sycamore even studied meteorites in the Hoenn region a few years ago. Maybe he was onto something, though I doubt the Draconids lordomed at him enough for him to put the pieces together. This theory would explain why Mega Evolution is often described as an unpleasant event. We're literally overcharging our Pokemon with much more life force than it's meant to have. Why Rayquaza is the only Pokemon that can Mega Evolve without a Mega Stone, since no one else really eats meteorites. And why they're so rare. Not every region is as meteorite struck as Hoenn, after all. What of Keystones, then? While it's a bit more of a reach, there is a reasonable theory to be made. We know from the Candlelight Library in Sinnoh that there was a time where there existed no differences between Pokemon and humans. It's reasonable to assume, then, that infinity energy is something they can also produce, and could thus also affect meteorites with, leading to the creation of a Humanite, or a Keystone. It would explain what turned the giant meteorite that landed into what would be Sutopolis into a giant Keystone. It simply was the accumulated infinity energy of all of those people. This would explain the two different Mega Evolution stories. The one in Hoenn was, in fact, the first time a Mega Evolution was ever observed, with the makeshift keystone from the massive meteorite resonating with Rayquaza's Mikado organ, while Kalos' history shows us your first ever, typical, Mega Evolution, with a much more standard Keystone and Mega Stone. This also could have just been something they retconned after the release of X and Y, or it could just be an in-universe contradiction. It's not like Japan and France would ever put their ancient folktales against each other to see who's telling the truth. That, to my understanding, is our best guess at what Mega Evolution is and where all its elements come from, and a reasonably solid explanation of what Megastones and Keystones are in a way that connects everything together. Well, almost everything. There's something that still nags at me. It's silly, it's probably nothing. But the dex entry of Mega Aerodactyl. It's strange, isn't it? It says Mega Evolution is awakening ancient genes, despite also being called a burden. The Let's Go games even go a step further, claiming Mega Evolution completely restored its genes. Mega Ampharos is also said to stimulate its genes and awaken its long-dormant dragon blood. That's a weird point, right? And the Mega Evolution symbol, the one we see in the Keystones and every time a Pokemon Mega evolves, looks exactly like a stylized DNA strand? It's not just a game visual, it's present in-universe too. The Draconid found it relevant enough to depict it in their murals. It's a weird choice, isn't it? For how repeated it is, it feels a little haphazard, and even with my current connections, I can't really seem to make it fit. I mean, is there anything that would tie together DNA and meteorites? Wait a minute. We're forgetting something, aren't we? So, everything up until this point was, as best as I could, my efforts to purely tie game events together to give a believable and concise explanation of where I believe Megastones and Keystones come from. This is not that. Instead, we're going to take the missing parts and loose ends and see if we can find something fun out of them. There is, in fact, a tie between those ideas. Deoxys, the DNA Pokemon, the one lying in wait inside a meteorite en route for Hoenn, a path that is described as almost purposeful. We know it has a very conflictual relationship with Rayquaza, with them taking any chances they have in any media to duke it out. And if Rayquaza eating meteorites means it preys on the virus Deoxys mutated from, it would make perfect sense. Interestingly, it might have been a relationship the Draconids were more aware of, as you can see Deoxys' face on their painting of Mega Rayquaza's first appearance, the one that predicted the meteorite we faced in the Delta episode. Somehow, they knew Deoxys would be found in there, and if we recall Zinnia's tale, the detail of the meteorite shining, as if some great life was held within, wouldn't just be flowery language, it would be true. What these meteorites bore was a virus, one that would stay dormant in most of them, only to be irrevocably changed by a blast of infinity energy. It tracks with what we know of Deoxys too. The 4 forms it already has and countless Pokemon entries mentioning its mutations show it has a very flexible nature, so it's reasonable to assume it would be transformed by something as monumental as the ultimate weapon or Groudon in Kyogre waking up if it was simply a virus inhabiting long-crashed meteorites. Hell, it even looks like a Megastone. Not the body itself, but the spherical crystal core at the center, what the Pokédex calls its brain. A link between Deoxys and Mega Evolution could explain the way Mega Evolution seemed to reawaken dormant genes in some Pokemon, including fossil Pokemon with very little genetic information left. Who better for that than the DNA Pokemon? Could that be why they chose to make this event Pokemon into the final boss of the post-game arc? One that has you explore the first ever Mega Evolution, and gives you all the pieces to put its true nature together? Make it the first time they made a mythical Pokemon available outside of an event, something they've only done so far for Arceus? Hell, it's not like they didn't have any choice. All the talk of meteorites, also known as shooting stars, and wishes made by the people would have fit Jirachi just as well. But no, that's not who we face up in the stratosphere during the Delta episode's climax. I think that's purposeful. Since we're already on the level of connecting extremely loose strands that barely make sense, what about the sundial? It's interestingly said to have been here for over 3,000 years, logically making it older than the ultimate weapon. It's also notably not of the typical colors used for either the ultimate weapon, which tends to be turquoise, or Mega Evolution, which is usually more of a rainbow gradient. Instead, it's a strangely unique pink that doesn't really match anything else, aside from maybe Diancie, but like, come on man, what do you want me to do with that? Could it be from space then? That could explain how something this monumental existed before even the ultimate weapon, and would connect it back to Mega Evolution in some extremely far-fetched way. And maybe explain how it can turn sunlight into magical sunlight for an hour. The city it's in, Anistar, is notably space-themed, with the city's leader, Olympia, looking at stars to see the future, and theming her whole gym around them. It's a connection, better than nothing, though it feels like a major stretch that I wouldn't put too much stock in. I'm much more interested by the Mega Fragments shown in one ZA screenshot, said to be scattered across Lumiose. Doesn't that pink look a little familiar? We might finally get to learn where the stupid rock is from. Hell, if we want to get real weird with it, we could point out that Deoxys is a very humanoid Pokemon found in a place called Birth Island, and that one of the circles on the Mystery Chase stages stands for Deoxys, and that could mean that So, what now? Why did I go on this giant tangent about how Mega Evolution is all secretly Deoxys meteorites and they never told us? I don't know. It feels like the most logical conclusion. You'd have to be pretty silly not to connect the only 2 cases of big DNA branded meteorites in the same region, but it's not like anything really came of it. At best, it's a neat little background connection, and technically an expansion of the Deoxys virus lore, and a way to know where Mega Stones and Keystones come from, or at worst, a very wild reach to make connections that were never really intended. For all I know, ZA will retcon a bunch of stuff and make the origin of Mega Evolution Hoopa or something, whatever. For what it's worth, I feel like I presented a solid enough case of the state of Mega Evolution lore right now, and I just really hope they don't immediately retcon how Megas work and where they come from when ZA comes out and makes us all sound stupid. For now, I'm excited to see what's in store for when the game comes out. And hey, for all we know, maybe we should keep our eyes on space. That's it, that's the video, yeah, I don't know, do the YouTube, you know, you've been on YouTube before, you know how that stuff works, I don't need to tell you, If you like this video, like and subscribe. I want to make at least a few more videos. Maybe a series dissecting each type and what their meaning and influences are, because I think a lot of people don't fully understand why some Pokemon are fairy type, or some are normal, or why don't we have a sound type, that kind of stuff. And I think it could be interesting to make a video about it. I also would like to make a video on the Pokemon timeline as a whole, which is another topic I feel like a lot of people mix up. But that's gonna take a while because I know ZA added some stuff. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. Tell me which starter you picked for ZA. I went with Tepig because I like him and he's cute. Alright, bye.
Meteor happens. Meteor happens.